Aloha! Today we're going to deep dive into the supernatural powers of our polar energies. We call the masculine and feminine energies. We're going to discuss how we can harness these powers for ourselves when we are in balance, and look at how the energies can become toxic too if it swings too far the other way. I'm Jennifer Espenscheid, and this is the Art of Life podcast. I believe that all humans are deeply creative and that we have the right and the power to design our own reality. I'm dedicated to helping others be inspired by this, sharing the methods and protocols and practices for enlivening the spirit in all of us. And the purpose, of course, is so that we have more ease, effectiveness, enjoyment in life, and expansion. My 4 E's. One of the fundamental premise of my life I embody all day, every day, and work with a considerable amount is this dance and alchemy with my masculine and feminine energies. I have a beautiful visual, a piece of art I want to gift you, and also a really great visual with everything we're going to talk about today in a nice chart so that you don't have to take notes or anything. I'll link it in the show notes. And it's for you to be able to refer to and drop in with. And then there'll be that work of art that really embodies in the design of the flower of life combined with the Metatron's cube, the masculine and feminine energies, and its beauty. So don't worry about taking notes. You can just close your eyes and get into the visuals and flow of this. First, we'll go over some concepts and definitions, and then we're going to look at the body, our human body, as a wisdom or a map for the greater understanding of how we utilize the powers, how we might block our powers, where things might manifest in our body that are actually speaking to us that you can utilize. And then we're going to look really thoroughly and unpack the energies with lots of practical and metaphorical examples so that we have a really good immersion. And all this is going to happen in just a few minutes. At the end, we'll also look at some examples of how I use this in my life that might further demonstrate how you can bring it into your awareness, your work, your family life. In this discussion, first of all, it's really important to point out that we're not talking about male and female. We are talking about 2 energies, polar energies that are in each and every one of us. And those concepts are often misunderstood. We think we understand what they are, and there's always new levels of understanding, which I call overstanding. So we'll get rid of some of the misconceptions, and we'll look at this and unravel it from every angle so that we have that deep awareness, and then it'll come up very easily in our lives when maybe we're feeling a little bit of stuckness. Every emotion is healthy in its place. Sometimes we can get unhealthy, and we hear the term toxic masculine or toxic feminine a lot. So remember, both energies are absolutely critical. They are intrinsic in each and every one of us and in relationships. And when they are balanced, once again, we have those 4 E's. We have ease, effectiveness, enjoyment, and expansion in our life. And when we don't, when we're feeling the opposites of those things, that means we're a little bit out of balance. And so when we can look into where we might be stuck or why we might be feeling unease or dis-ease or anxiety, we can get back to being a whole human, and that's when we're essentially very creative, and that's where our divinity is. In relationships, we hear about polarity attraction, and that's referring to the concept that in relationships, people are often most attracted to individuals that have the opposite energy or qualities. And similar to how magnets, the polarity, like this magnet, if I flip the back one around the other way, it would just repel each other. So it needs actually those opposites to attract and to keep a relationship together. And in our bodies, in our whole beingness, we need that blend, that dance of the 2 to keep our wholeness together. So it's dynamic, it's always changing, and it's very essential. In relationship, we have this strong connection. And when we're out of balance, it doesn't matter what the relationship, if it's a love relationship, doesn't matter what your orientation, there is some sort of polarity that is attractive. And when you lose that, your relationship continue, it just might not be that high chemistry that some people have, some relationships have. I have it in my household. So I have 2 daughters, and they express as a lot of times very feminine energy. So in my household with them, I often maintain my healthy masculine presence. And so we have a balanced household, a lot of yin and yang, and it ebbs and flows. Literally humans, male and female humans, those 2 energies when combined, that's the ultimate expression of divinity within humans. In ourselves, it creates all those wonderful things a balanced human has. We're very effective, we're expansive, we are independent and able to be interdependent, and we are strong individuals. And that literally means divided within, right? So as an individual, a strong individual, we have those 2 parts of us that we blend. So when we become divine within ourselves, when we are ultimately creative and in flow, we have those 2 in balance. And so therefore each of us is 100% whole, and anything then can be created when you understand yourself as fundamentally enough. You're perfect, you don't need anything else, and you are 100% responsible for your happiness and for your life, and therefore you're the creator of it, not relying on anyone else. And that can of course go too far. We're going to get into that in just a minute. So I think it's a wonderful idea to be on the same page with our definitions and concepts. First, we're realizing that these are energies, masculine and feminine, and that they're in each of us. And then also the terms body, mind, and spirit. The body is our physical body. In the past, we have tried to separate those things. In the ancient past, everything was in alignment. We tend to be able to attain a lot more wisdom when we do listen to our body. If we have a feeling of stuckness, or if we have a pain or gut feelings, things like that, then we have our intellect, and then we have our spirit, the part that inspires us. And as a human, we are the only animal that has these 3 things and are aware of it. And so to blend them together and merge them more often, we're going to be more and more creative. We have a better chance of fulfilling we hear a lot about people want to have purpose. In the Buddhist texts, we hear about Dharma, and that is our spiritual reason for being here. And we're most comfortable and most in our joy and have that power flowing through us when we are fulfilling our Dharma. All kinds of different schools of thought on it. You can call it whatever you want. This body, mind, and spirit alignment, and then bringing our masculine and feminine energies into balance. Our bodies are our organic being, and it can inform, if we're listening, our intellect, which is incredible and not to be denied. And then our spirit both guides us and inspires us. So our hearts and brains, let's remember, have both an electrical and a magnetic charge. And the left side of the brain has more control over the right side of the body, and the right side of the brain has more control over the left side of the body. So when we're thinking and you hear the terms right brain and left brain, your right brain tends to be more creative or flowing, which we will dive deeper into, and left more analytical, thinking in straight lines, action oriented. And that's why our left side is our more feminine, and our right side is considered the masculine side. And then some schools of thought also assign feminine to the lower half of our body, from our torso down, but then the masculine half is our top, feminine front, masculine back. It's always worth considering and listening to your body. I like to use it, and there are books written on this and lots of studies written on this, that if you are having or are considering some unease in your body, or a pain or a blockage or an ache, like right now, I'm having ear issues in my left ear. So once I've considered all the physical healing strategies and I've gone into how I can support my body, nutrition and all the things, I definitely always consider what's going on in this would be the masculine side of my brain. Maybe how can I better support my masculine side, my hearing, looking into all those. It's a whole nother layer of wisdom and things to consider. When I'm out of balance, I know it because I might feel uneasy or there's a dullness. Sometimes it's a tension in my body, not necessarily a pain. I might feel very distracted. And so I'll look into, okay, where am I a little bit in my unhealthy feminine or unhealthy masculine? And then once I've considered that, there's a lot more fuel behind and reasons behind why I can get back into alignment. So it can be emotional too. It can be, am I feeling a bit of resentment, or am I trying to control this situation? I might be in my unhealthy masculine, or if I just feel my energy leaking all over, or I'm cloudy and unclear or anxious, I might be in my unhealthy feminine. And these are often called toxic masculine energy, hurtful or just really unhealthy. For the purposes of our discussion today, we're going to use the words useful and unuseful and healthy and unhealthy, because they don't hold the judgment that good or bad or toxic or other things might have. Essentially, when we're in good balanced energy and using these superpowers, we are healthy and we're useful and we're creative. And when we're not, it's typically going to be unhealthier habits, unhealthier ways of feeling, and we're not feeling useful or productive either. We're not in our joy. So we'll just use the terms healthy and unhealthy. So over here is going to be our masculine, and over here is going to be our feminine. And then on the outsides of what I'll be showing you and we'll be talking through will be the unhealthy, and then we'll have our masculine and feminine energies, and then what happens when you combine them. Let's look at this from every angle, some of it metaphor, some of it anecdotal, some of it things we all know about, and that will really help us have a beautiful understanding. So once again, the middle is going to be our balance, which is giving us that perfect blend, and it dances back and forth between the two energies, helping us be a person able of enjoyment and having ease flow through us. Okay, so the first is a metaphor. I imagine our feminine energy as being like a river. Rivers, lakes, oceans, waterfalls, bodies of water that are healthy and teeming with life. And our masculine energy is going to be our mountain, our meadows, our reefs, the things that contain the life, that give us balance. And then on the outskirts, we're going to have, if this goes too far, becomes a little bit too unhealthy, we're not just right. We're not in that Goldilocks zone anymore. So for our masculine, we're going to have things like the earth moving. We're going to have earthquakes, volcanic disruptions, landslides, because there is no give in that land. There is no bit of feminine energy, where with the feminine, if we go too far this way, we're going to start to have flooding where these waters are just puddling out. We're going to have swamps where things get lethargic without much purpose, maybe tsunamis, unuseful, huge waves and rapids, where when we marry the two and come together, we're going to have a benevolent environment. We're going to have really stable and vibrant life. And I love this metaphor because essentially, for the most part, that's our Goldilocks zone of Earth. This beautiful slice of life here on the Earth's surface, a little bit above and a little bit below, but it's this Goldilocks zone where we have mostly stable environment and we have this teeming, thriving life. So the next metaphor I like to use, and this is also literal, would be the masculine being the stable and foundational, and that's over here, and the feminine being the nurturing and the flexible. So when we're talking about utilizing these energies as building materials. This is all across life, right? But in building materials, one of the unhealthy masculine things that can happen is when things are too rigid, or when they're very rigid and then there's movement, things can break. So that's where we get our volcanoes and our eruptions and our earthquakes. And this can be really destructive. When our flexibility and nurturing tend to go even farther, then you get a floppiness and like a cesspooling. And when we're talking about building something like a structure, the feminine, if it goes too far, can't build very high. And the masculine has to build so wide to maintain anything. So what the beauty of marrying those two things are, the analogy I like to use is reinforced concrete. And so we have our compression strength, which is our foundation, our concrete, and then we have the steel in it, the rebar, which on its own might flop over after a while, but it gives it that tensile strength. So we have like compression and tensile strength, and now we can build higher and safer than ever. I like to think of it as evolution in technology, building higher, that kind of marrying of the stable and foundational with the flexible and nurturing. Then we have, and I love very much this analogy, this really helps me and a lot of people. So we have our masculine as the container. It's openable, it's transparent, it is structural, and then the feminine is the ingredients. It's the thoughtful and the meaningful, and so it's the content. And together, alone, very loud. Alone, this is it's just a container, right? And then if it was just ingredients, it would just be haphazard all over. Now we have something to look at. We have created something. And this could be, if it goes too far in either direction, your container could be closed off. You can't see in, you can't get in. When we think of structure, it's our skeleton, and it would just be a dry skeleton sitting there devoid of life. The feminine would be, if it went too far, would be all these ingredients all over. It'd be really random and scattered. And it would be all of in terms of a body, it would be a puddle of parts. Without our container structure, we would just leak all over and would only not even live for a minute. So it would be a mess, in other words. When we bring it into wholeness in the middle, what we have for the human body is a structure and things that hold it together and boundaries, and we have all the organs and blood and nourishment and things in it. So we have that ingredients and the container. It can also be a thriving aquarium. The contents would just be all over. It wouldn't be an aquarium. It wouldn't sustain life. School is a really great thing to think about when we're looking at the masculine and feminine of the sacred ingredients and the sacred container, where we have this beautiful place to learn, and it's a safe structure. It's this container for people to come in and learn and evolve. A pot of curry, that's one of my favorite metaphors, is green curry. So we have this pot, and then we mix all the ingredients appropriately, and it becomes this whole new amazing alloy of flavor. And a loving home could be another one, where we set the container, we have all the things in place, and then we have the life within it that can thrive better once it has that container. So a loving home is another one I like to think of. The masculine is discerning, it's boundaries, and then the feminine is open and trusting. When the feminine goes too far and it can be unhealthy is when someone might be gullible or victimy. I call it victimy, where things just keep happening to them because they have no healthy masculine in themselves to help them discern and with boundaries. And then the masculine, on the other hand, can end up being guarded and judgmental because they can't be trusting and opening in healthy ways. So in the center, when we are dancing with those energies, we're going to be making decisive and sound decisions. and open to all the data, open to if we ask someone else, we're not closed off, and we have good boundaries around how much we have to ask or pull people, and we're just discerning. We're not judging anything. So marrying those two, the discerning and with good boundaries, and the open and trusting. Okay, I need to insert one here because I forgot a really nice delineation between the masculine and feminine. Our masculine can be our protection, our protective awareness of the outside and information, and then our feminine is our intuition, our awareness of the inside information. And if we're too into an unhealthy masculine way of thinking or mode, we can get into possessiveness, jealousy, and over scrutiny. And the same with the feminine. If we go too outside of it, we can get into jealousy and anxiety. So when we marry the two, when we come together in a good balance, we are going to be effective, efficient, and have an enjoyable existence. We're able to both plan and be spontaneous. We're feeling safe, and we have good gut feelings of what's going to happen. Next, I like to think about masculine as inspired energy and action, and then we have the feminine as inspired thought. So if inspired thought goes too far and it's just this constant thinking, that's when we can get into monkey mind and thought loops. And on the other hand, we have getting into, if it's actionable, maybe we're pushing and we're really forcing things. So what we want to do is come in and use that inspired thought and action, and we're going to then have a very efficient, forward, thoughtful progress. So it's always a progression in a thoughtful way, as opposed to pushing or forcing, or just going round and round in our mind. My favorite way of approaching a project is by marrying my focus, which is masculine, very direct, using tools, data, things I've already learned, and with my flow, and that's my feminine, the kind of meandering and the imagination. And if that goes too far, it can be ineffective and confusing. It's just so all over the place. Or the masculine could get into having blinders on and being single-minded. And when we marry the two, the flow and the focus, we get flocus, which is what I am often trying to achieve in my conversations, in a podcast, for an art project, when I'm creating a meal, when we're making love. We want that flocus. So we are intentional, and we have imagination, and we're also bringing awareness right to what we're doing. That's a really important one. And flocus is applied to everything. It's just wonderful. You'll often hear about there being a masculine and feminine of day and night. So the masculine is associated with day because it's very active. During the day, we're figuring, we're fixing, we're doing, and it's associated with the warm, even warm colors. So the sun is out, we're warm, we're doing and fixing, breaking things down, creating. If we go too far with that, there's going to maybe be a lot of futile effort. We're going to be exhausted. There's overactivity, and it can also be like the stiflingly hot. So we want to be more towards that Goldilocks zone, right? Of the blending in the night, which is the feminine, and that's going to be our dreaming time, our processing. So much happens in our minds, in our unconscious while we sleep. So masculine conscious, feminine unconscious. This is when we're resting and rejuvenating. So we're getting all the body back together. We're cleaning up our digestive system. Our liver's getting cleaned out. Our human growth hormones kicking in. And it's also associated with the cool. So having that balance between warm and cool. We live in a body that basically stays within a few degrees of temperature. It can get a lot colder and survive for a bit of time, but it can't get that much hotter. So we have this beautiful balance. And then when the feminine might get a little too out of whack, then we're going to feel clouded or frigid. and a bit foggy. We really want to sleep as much as possible during the night so that we're not foggy and clouded during the day and overly daydreamy. And then if we're not getting good sleep and we're trying to be active and get things done at night, that's when we're going to have that exhaustion and kind of futile effort where we're not getting much done. So what happens when we're in balance, we have a really healthy circadian rhythm, and we're very effective, we're easeful, we can fall into a deep sleep and be restored, we can get up in the morning and be active and get all our sacred work done. It's really that beautiful marriage there. So I like to think of the center as a healthy sleep and wake cycle, and our circadian rhythm is just, we're knocking it out of the ballpark. Feminine and masculine also has to do with this giving and receiving. A lot of times in circles, or when you're thinking of giving, your palm, your right hand, is facing down in a gesture of giving, and your left hand, the feminine side, is facing up in a gesture of receiving. We have receiving, allowing, and being independent as feminine, and then the masculine is giving and providing, and also independent. And being independent is healthy. When we get on the outskirts of that, so the feminine, when it goes too far, now we're getting dependent. It's not a receiving and allowing, it's more like a greed, and we're going to be depleting and lonely and needy. And my daughter came up with the term pleady, where it's just whiny and always needing more, and someone else is always responsible for our happiness. And then on the other hand, we have when giving and providing becomes lopsided, then that's when we get into overgiving, even martyrdom. We can then end up being resentful and having expectation, and it's also very enabling. So we can get dependent, even addictive, and then we have that enabling. And oftentimes in ourselves and in relationship, whether it's father-daughter, lovers, or friends, if it's an unhealthy relationship, you'll start to get into those dynamics where one is enabling, another's unhealthy, dependent energy, and then it becomes this addictive process for both of them, where when we marry them gorgeous ways, we're having a cycle of life. A really healthy ecosystem is one way to look at that, where nature's giving and taking in balance. We have relationships that are loving and interdependent, where you have two independent people that are interdependent. They're adding each their 100%, so it's actually 200%. And so much can grow and evolve out of these kinds of environments and relationships. The masculine and feminine also can be looked at as practical and meaningful. So practical and useful, and meaningful and spiritual. And when we bring those two together, that's when we have symbols where they mean something and it's practical because it's conveying, or tools, once again practical, but they're meaningful, they're going to get a job done. Helpful invention is really a marrying of these meaningful and practical energies. And when it goes beyond that, when something is too practical, a lot of times it can be dull and lifeless. And that can happen with even good habits, right? If I get too practical in my things, it doesn't seem to have a lot of life in it. And then if I'm too, the kids or people might call it woo-woo, if you're too out there and just in that realm without some masculine in it, perhaps you can be very ineffective. A lot of people talk about, I feel like I'm floundering or ineffective. So by marrying those things, we really get this conglomeration of inventiveness and forward movement and being able to create a lot of beauty with a lot of intention and meaning. So my next example is embodied in the piece of art I'm going to give you. And this is our masculine, straight and direct, balanced with our feminine, curved and soft. And I blended the flower life is over here, that's feminine, with the straight lines of Metatron's cube. Now, if we go too far, if we're too soft, then that's when we get into being avoidant or cowardice. And then on the masculine swing of things, our straight and direct nature can become bullheaded and conflict creating and harsh. So when we bring those together, we merge that's this overlaying of these two beautiful symbols. That's the flower of life and Metatron's cube. That's when we have an obstacle and we know where we want to be, and we can just be decisive, and we can go straight through it to remove the obstacle, or we can just flow around it. We are direct in our speech, but we also know our audience, and we're speaking in our best language, so we're not coming off as harsh, and we're not avoiding either. So that's a really important aspect of the design that you can download. By looking at it, you can really visually see how the two together are so gorgeous. The playfulness of the feminine is balanced by the, let's see, that's over here, playful, is balanced by the safety of the masculine. Safe, certainty, and rules or guidelines, boundaries, and then balanced with the playful uncertainty and imagination. And these, when they're out of whack, can become toxic or unhealthy. You might have dogma or tyranny if it's unhealthy masculine energy. It's more erratic, it's more rigid and dogmatic. And on the feminine end of things, it goes into irresponsibility and delusion and even bleeding energy. So when we bring that playful uncertainty together with imagination, together with our safety, certainty around our safety and the rules around that, then we have curiosity. I think that's where we come together and we have curiosity. We feel safe and we can be playful and we can wonder. And curiosity is such a lovely state to be in. It's childlike and it's also the child of invention, right? So I like to think of this, like a lot of times people are most happy at a party. And why is that? Recently, we're becoming more and more intentional with our gatherings. And what we do is we co-create a safe container. And so that means it's going to be very comfortable. There are guidelines for making sure that everyone feels welcome, making sure everyone feels safe. And then that container is filled with inspired lighting and awesome music and wonderful food and lots of laughter and dancing and connection. So that's one of my best examples of marrying the safe certainty with the playful uncertainty. And when you combine that, all sorts of magic can happen. With my work and when I'm working with other people with creative coaching, I will lay out the dichotomy and the necessity for marrying discipline and freedom. So the masculine discipline, this would be our practices, our methods, our structured actions, and our feminine, our creativity, our brainstorming, authenticity, spontaneity. When we combine those, we are going to have very successful outcomes with creation, whatever that creation is. When we don't, our masculine can get into being too constrained and we become very stuck. Conversely, if everything is too free and there's no discipline to it, then we're going to have energy leaks all over and we'll get depleted because everything will just leak out. So we don't want to be stuck or depleted. We want to bring this freedom and creativity into our discipline and practices. And that's when we have amazing events. It might be a holiday. Let's say we're taking a trip and the container, these guidelines, we're going to go on these dates, and then seeing what everyone needs and planning for the things that might book up and making sure that everyone has what they want packed. So that way you have so much freedom when you get there. You're going to end up with more time. You're going to sleep better. You're going to have all these planned and unplanned adventures, meaningful experiences. And then that adventure isn't just that memory. It's actually going to evolve the rest of your life. So you're going to expand because of it. By marrying that discipline and the freedom, We can have our projects go really well, our meals, our schedules, anything that we're solving, we have that beautiful discipline and then practices, and we have our freedom and our imagination. So really important way to think of masculine and feminine energies. And then I think the last thing we'll look at, and there's more, and I'm excited to hear from you guys, other ways that you utilize these superpowers. I like to also think of them as the extroverted and the introverted. So our extroverted masculine, social, very magnetic and confident and in touch, meaning they're in touch with the energy of the room. They're in touch with and not ignoring what else is going on in their social world, where the feminine is introverted and introspective. So it's self-nurturing and assured and in tune. So it's an inward tuning. One is out, one is in. If the masculine goes too far, it can be thought of when someone comes into a room and the energy is sucked out of it. That could be because their energy sucking, more of a narcissistic energy, more show-offy or overly flamboyant, egotistical, instead of that healthy, secure masculine energy that is magnetic and benevolent. And then on the other hand, a feminine energy of self-nurturing and introversion, if that goes too far, you could even be painfully shy. You could have low self-worth, overthinking things, turning so far inward that you don't have a good perspective on yourself anymore. You could even be agoraphobic. So we really want to take those introversion and self-nurturing energies and the extroverted and social energies and the confidence of both and intertwine them. And that becomes a person that is 100% responsible for themselves. They're content, open, easy energy, whether they're alone, in a relationship, with small groups or in large crowds. There's a self-assurance and there's a balance, right? So people can feel comfortable. They may still, of course, we all have preferences and we're all over the spectrum, yet we can not lose ourselves or dominate something. It's this beautiful balance of marrying those extroverted and introverted energies. When someone feels like they always have to be around someone or be busying their mind or be very social and can't be alone, that of course is something to look at and maybe do some more self-nurturing. And then if you only want to be alone and you're becoming fearful or uncomfortable being around other people, then you're not sharing your light. So looking at becoming more in touch and having those very healthy masculine, knowing you're safe and you can help yourself be safe and your confidence to let your light shine, that's when we can step into more of our dharma or our purpose in life, this whole humanness. So those are some of the things, some of the different ways that I like to think of masculine and feminine energies. There are many. Download and utilize it in your life. Share it with your kids. Share it with the people around you. I think a lot of the misconceptions that come up with masculine and feminine really hold us back. They keep us constricted, and it's just a programming or a misunderstanding or a fear that is keeping us in those definitions. And if we really understand and look at them, then we can utilize them and create such harmony in our being. I have noticed such a relief of physical pain, mental anxiety and anguish across the board, because it is us. It's our physicality, it's our emotional body. Our spirit is available when we are blending our masculine and feminine energies, when we are, sometimes it's referred to as emptying, where we're not full of ego or identifying with anything. When we're just whole and empty, that's when spirit can come in. That's when we can problem solve. That's when we can invent. That's when we take good care of ourselves and our loved ones. That's when lovemaking is extraordinary. All things creative happen easier. Life is more easeful and enjoyable and effective and evolutionary when we are a whole, balanced human. This is when I believe we're divine. So once again, knowing you're in balance, you're going to know that because you're feeling free and grounded at the same time. You're clear and you're decisive. You're making forward progress in the areas that are important to you. You're communicating well. And you'll know when you're not, maybe you're just stuck in some way. Maybe you can't think of the best way to conduct a meeting, or you're just feeling dull, or you actually have a physical pain, or you're having monkey mind. That's a sign, okay, let's sit down and write it out, or breathe it in and out, or do something to nurture your masculine or your feminine, whatever's out of balance. And you'll see a lot more cohesion, you'll be a lot more mindful, and all aspects of your life are going to become much more of what you desire and what you're envisioning. And so it's my go-to practice. It's not even a practice anymore. It is absolutely integrated, where I will immediately know if I'm a little off. And sometimes we have to be more in our healthy masculine. And when I'm with a partner, love partner, I might be more in my healthy feminine, of course, because in love relationship, that's what I prefer to express as. In ourselves, these are energies. These are currents that are being moved by our brain and our heart. These are actual measurable currencies. And when you can consider them in all aspects of life, a tension goes away and a clarity comes in, so that we can be happier and we can be more approachable, and we are greater creators of our own reality. So thank you for being part of this. Thank you for always doing your best to be in your healthy energies, and together, by all of us merging these energies and healing and understanding where we are and becoming more whole, we're going to have more co-creation, more joy, and a better place, more fun, more adventure. It's going to be amazing. Love it. Okay, thank you.